either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
It's game over, listeners. Game over. As we open up these slimy eggs and take the face huggers to the gullet in the new episode from the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast. I'm Nicho.
And I'm Chris.
And if you haven't guessed it, we are finally returning to, the xenomorph universe? Alien universe?
I've always just called it the Alien franchise, and I'm sure that's technically wrong, but I don't care.
Yeah, we're doing aliens. Finally something a little serious for once.
Yeah. The second one, in case anyone is possibly confused, this is the second one in the franchise.
Yep, and for those unfamiliar, it's screenplay by the now famous James Cameron, with story by Cameron, David Giller, Walter Hill, based on the characters by Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Susset, directed by Cameron, who we'll get into why we're bringing up Cameron so early on.
We sure will.
Is because he is it's a very unique situation for a very fresh director to release banger after banger after banger.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's starring Sigourney Weaver as Ripley.
Of course.
Carrie Henn as Newt. And Michael Biehn as Corporal Hicks. And if you don't know the plot, it's
kind of the same as the first one.
Yeah, going back to the same asteroid, but there's more. It's like that meme of a Letterboxd review. Alien. That was pretty good, but it could use more aliens. Second review of Aliens. Holy shit.
So many aliens. Correct. Yeah, this one really asked the question, what if there was just more of them? And we got the answer.
Yeah, there's a lot more.
There's so many more.
But our sources for today's episode include Superior Firepower the Making of Alien documentary, the 2003 cast and crew commentary, and The Making of Aliens by J.W. Rinsler. And part of the reason I wanted to also do Aliens for this year is because it's one of those movies where I will always have a soft spot for Alien.
True.
But Aliens really took it to like the next level of stardom.
I would agree that this is the movie that made the franchise what it is.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, without it, you just have that one movie from, 78?
Yeah, something like that. Also, remember that,
79.
Yes. You also have to remember that, yes, the first one wasn't by any means a flop. It did well, but it did not have the wave of fan material that we now are used to with Alien franchise stuff and James Cameron movies in general. This is really where it all started.
Well, it's also post Star Wars, so you have the merchandising that comes with it as well. So.
Oh, there was so much merchandising, and merchandising for people who probably didn't watch this movie, which was an interesting choice.
That's the one thing I was always curious about, how we went from a single xenomorph to many of them.
Because they're like cockroaches of space.
Yeah, you kill them and they just keep coming back.
Yeah, they really do. And I do think that where the first one took a lot of very artsy inspiration from its original source material.
No, it's just straight. They were open about ripping off everything.
They really did. This one, I think, leaned a lot more into the questions, which we now know is Cameron's main style of how he does things, is questions of what if it was this, who would do this, really digging deep into every aspect of a movie that most people would argue didn't need to happen.
I now kind of want to see James Cameron at a pitch for an Alien versus Predator movie on the Titanic, but he's going Alien versus Predator on this, and slams down the Titanic boat.
Okay, there is so many good stories of Cameron in board meetings trying to sell a movie that it's just the stupidest way possible. This one, apparently, according to rumors, he wrote Alien and then $sign on a board during a board meeting. It was huh?
No. Yeah.
And how true is that? I don't know. Probably not super true.
It's not, because it wasn't like they weren't interested in having a sequel right away. There were just some attempts at making a sequel, but none of the scripts were working for Fox.
True.
And particularly because of, at the time, there was a decline in box office for horror films, as well as a court issue with the original producers, Gordon Corll and David Giller and Walter Hill, who had wanted to do a sequel, but they couldn't get the green light due to the opposition of making sequels for budget issues at the time.
Well, also, they were in a lawsuit against 20th Century Fox, who used some silly math to claim that the first Alien wasn't as financially successful as it actually was, meaning that they didn't get paid as much as they should have been.
Yeah, and sequels were not as common back then either. I mean,
they definitely weren't. And also, like, the first one was a risk. The second one, also going to be potentially even more of a risk. So, like, I'm not surprised that there was hesitance for it. What I am surprised is who ended up finally working on this.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a massive list, too.
It really is.
But it did take a regime change to allow the sequel to even start going forward. But by that point, Hill and Giller still had some... A lot of them had moved off, but they had an idea for the sequel, kind of blending the ideas of Southern Comfort and the Magnificent Seven, which, I mean, we see a lot of adaptations of Japanese film, Magnificent Seven being one.
Always.
And also, fun fact, if anyone tells you The Godfather is the first movie to have Part 2 in its title, they are wrong. It is Sanshiro Sugata, a Kurosawa film as well.
Of course it is.
Yes.
Of course it is.
Fun little trivia.
Okay.
Which, again, with many of the other attempts at making a sequel, didn't generate much interest and they had moved on.
Especially a horror sequel.
Very much so. Not like the 1,000 Friday the 13th or Jason movies we've seen.
No, and remember, a lot of those came after the franchise push that Aliens created here.
I'd say Star Wars push.
Well, okay, but Star Wars is not a horror.
Okay.
The amount of toys, merch, and video games that came after Aliens, and then kind of became, like, the standard for a lot of horror films, especially ones that knew they were going to be sequels, or have a big franchise, like the Jason games, like Friday the 13th, all of those. I would argue Aliens really was, like, the big push to be like, look, even the children will buy your merchandise.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I didn't do a whole lot of research into the merchandising.
I read toys and immediately had to go on a rabbit hole. Because what child is possibly watching Aliens? Yeah.
Man, praise me.
Yeah, you shouldn't have. This is one of the ones that I didn't even need you to warn, because again, I love the whole franchise. I've seen all of these movies. I knew that this is one that a child could not walk through my living room and not be scarred to death. I watched this one in the privacy of my room with the volume turned down, because the amount of times a small child is screaming bloody murder and something is attacking people it's too much for most children. And these toys were not targeted toward, like, teens. These were, like, 8-year-old, 6-year-old toys of xenomorphs.
Yeah, I remember seeing one of my cousins had the Alien Queen from this as a figure, and I thought it was really cool. I actually saw this for the first time around 7th grade.
Yeah.
So, like, but I had seen Alien a little bit before that.
Sure. So. And I feel like Alien is just the tiniest bit more tame than this one. Not a lot, but there's just enough here of constant. In different ways, yeah. This one's more action-based. It doesn't say focused on the gore and the violence. Exactly. So, yeah. And then, like, when I was watching the movie, I was like, oh, I can see why video game was a thing. Because there are definitely parts of the movie where you're like, this would make a good level. Mm-hmm. Especially, like, the air duct scene, a couple of the shooting scenes. I'm like, okay, I can see where the vision was. And I was picturing in my head, like, oh, this is like an adult or later teen video game. Mm-hmm. Nay. They've advertised this to, like, middle school kids. And I was like, I don't know about that. Yeah, I can see it, though. But then it kind of makes sense, because now we have a ton of horror franchise where even if they don't think children are going to necessarily watch it, mm-hmm. you are going to find kid-sized stuff of just about all of them. And it kind of makes sense, because if the parent likes it and they think their kid can handle it, they'll watch it, or they'll just buy them the stuff, because kids like monsters, not necessarily the movie. Or your mom won't know you're staying up late in the basement watching this. That is most people's facts. Yeah. Moving on from their previous projects, Hill and Giller had started working on a science fiction version of Spartacus, as well as a version of The Great Escape, kind of trying to combine the two. And then this is where Cameron comes in. They had wanted to work with him, but they didn't like many of the ideas he was proposed, and so he had a lot of ideas. Yeah, so they brought up, well, what about you do a treatment to the sequel to Alien? And the reason this was brought up is because the possibility of it being a success with the success of Star Wars sparked a new interest in the sci-fi genre. Oh, definitely.
Something, again, Alien changed the idea that sci-fi movies are for kids and nerds to being more mainstream. Aliens kind of revived that darker side of it compared to, like, Star Wars.
Definitely.
And it's something that only made possible by no planning than our own Conan.
Of course, I love Conan. Welcome back, man.
De Laurentiis had Arnold Schwarzenegger on contract to do Conan the Destroyer, just as Terminator was about to start filming, so that pulled him away for 9 months.
Of course.
And so that gave Cameron the opportunity to write the 90-page treatment, reworking his idea from another movie called Mother, as well as get him the job to write Rambo 2.
Which, fantastic, love it.
Depends on where you want the Rambo franchise to go, but
I don't think anyone wanted it to go anywhere, and yet here we are.
Yeah. But this is where I think Cameron's genius shows early on.
Yeah.
Is because he loved the original so much, he didn't want to do the same that other sequels do, where they take the best parts and just tweak it enough to call it a sequel.
Very true.
Instead, he decided to make something within the world, which is something, again, we're seeing nowadays with Ballerina, the John Wick franchise. They're going about it the way that I think is the best way to do these types of sequels, is set in the world of this instead of trying to remake the same origin story over and over again.
Absolutely.
And so with that, he decided on a combat sequel instead of continuing the original idea.
Absolutely. Doesn't hurt also that Rambo was fresh in his mind.
Yeah, I mean, the Vietnam War was fresh in a lot of people's minds, so there's a lot of that influence in this too.
There definitely is.
But for going from that, how does Cameron end up getting the directing job?
Of one of the best horror movies of all time? Yeah, how does? Not even terribly famous yet, James Cameron.
Yeah, no, I mean, he hadn't even done Terminator yet, the thing that really put him on the map, and it's only because of that.
That's true.
So Cameron, we know he's worked on all kinds of special effects and whatnot. He had been working on Roger Corman's Galaxy of Terror, which inspired the creation of the worlds that influenced Aliens. But he had also done written and directed a short called Xenogenesis, as well as Piranha 2: The Spawning. So
of course,
he's got like his cult kind of background, but he's also got the craft to make something original and interesting.
Absolutely.
But because he only had a 90-page draft, which only put the movie into the second act, Fox wanted him to finish it when he was done filming Terminator, and if Terminator had done well, they would give him the directing role. And
no pressure.
Terminator did damn well.
It did very well.
And so, yeah, that's how Cameron ended up becoming the director of Aliens.
And arguably becoming Cameron himself. Because between Terminator, Rambo, and Aliens, it really jump-started his directing roles.
Yeah, I mean, going from Piranha 2 to these 3 movies is a huge step.
It is a huge jump. There's a drastic difference.
Oh, 100%. I mean, that's really the origin of the story. I mean, I think it's just a cool way to get to, like, they had wanted to do it, but it took the right amount of magical ingredients in the pot to make something truly that people consider a better movie than the original. Oh,
for sure.
Before we really get into the movie, Chris, what are we drinking today?
Today we have found a lovely little IPA called Space Camper.
By Boulevard Brewing.
Yeah. Cheers. Very space.
Yes. A little bitter.
I mean, IPA. I expect no less from an IPA. Should always taste a little bit like the bottom of a shoe, but...
Yeah. Specifically, before we get into it, I do want to state that we are covering the extended cut.
The intended vision, if you will.
Yeah, well, I mean, I 100% get that. Is like, you got studio involvement, but you gotta cut stuff to get it down to a certain number so you can have the maximum number of showings to get that profit.
Absolutely. Like, I get the math. However, I do feel like the extended edition is where it's at. And maybe the only one we all should bother to watch.
Like The Lord of the Rings.
Honestly, yeah. I understand if you don't have time on that one. You have time for Aliens. It's not that much longer.
No, not by much.
Not by a whole hour, like Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. But the title card, I like that it's similar to the original, and even the opening feels right up to like the original setup where we're returning to escape space shuttle, worrying for us if you've watched the original because now the computer's reactivating, playing on the original opening, and I mean, we've seen what happened the last time a computer awoke in this world of like, stuff's not supposed to go well, and there's like the silent probing and just that slight underscore that is very nice.
Oh, the music for this whole movie is so nice and incredible because James Horner only had 3 weeks to write all of it.
And even then, like, very last minute, Cameron was changing stuff, and so, like, he had to, like, really fix it, or call it in, basically.
Yeah, there was an interview with Horner where he did talk about his work in general with Cameron throughout the years, and he talked regularly about how, like, there were multiple scenes, aliens being one he mentioned, that he didn't actually see the scene that he was writing for, something he was not used to. He normally had, like, at least a draft of what he was going to be composing for. He's like, yeah, there was more than one times working with this man that we were flying blind. I saw the movie, I went, oh, that's where that went. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of like when Death Race 2000, where guy just composed generic scores for the love scene that got put into the car race scenes.
Absolutely, with one exception being that James Horner is not known for that style. He is usually so on top of, like, very detailed, like, with the scene. He and the director usually work very hand in hand. This time, he was originally promised 6 weeks, but Cameron and the producers kind of fucked around a little bit, and so it shortened to 3 for writing and composing and, like, recording, which is not enough time.
Nope.
And then on top of that, after all of it was said and done, Cameron went back and was like, actually, what if?
For those unfamiliar with Horner, he did Braveheart,
Yes.
How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and was brought back for Titanic because Cameron liked him.
Which is hilarious that he agreed.
He just hated the stupid constraint that they had of the studio time, instead of, like, allowing him to actually compose something properly.
Absolutely. The man's a musical genius, so I'm glad that we get to listen to his score, even if it was a little rushed.
Mm-hmm. Cameron had also wanted a seamless transition from the original to continue the story, which honestly, I think that's one of the most successful things he did with this movie, just to get you back into it, is you pick up, it feels almost exactly right off, even though, like, we do find out it's 57 years later.
Oh, no, I think this is maybe the most brilliant move that Cameron could have done, because we already had a fairly decently established character, and instead of having to rewrite for a whole new character and a set of casts, which we have a whole new set, minus her, we have at least one grounding figure that we can latch onto as an audience, and she can guide us through the rest of these horrors.
Yeah, well, and I'll get into it, because there's some cool things that they do, too, with her being a guide, and then when, like, her as a guide doesn't fail, reaches the limit of her knowledge. But I do like that, I mean, they set up that she never really gets back to Earth. She's at Gateway Station the whole time, and I like that they kept the cat alive. Jonesy is
I do too.
Still there.
Very cute. I'm also glad that Jonesy is left on the ship. Nothing bad happens to the cat in this movie. Never. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's one of those movies where it's a heavy focus on the animal, and the animal doesn't die.
Yes, it's delightful.
But I also like that when they set this up, it's supposed to be calming for her, but the company man, even though he's very much a smooth talker, we know the company's goals, like, regardless of how they're going to get her there.
Yeah.
It's like, you already are uneasy because, like, you already don't trust anyone who's associated with Weyland-Yutani.
Oh, for sure. And I also think they do such a good job of having the audience feel her tiredness. Because when we finished that first one, we were all so happy she was going home to never have to deal with this shit again. And we are not home, and she is back dealing with shit. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing, too. Cameron compared Weyland-Yutani to the Dutch West Indies companies, which...
I mean, that's a good comparison, I think.
Yeah, but I feel some people might lose it in the history because in the Notebook of History, it
is glossed over frequently.
It's a trading industry or trading company that dominated for over 200 years until the British came through, and not that they need any more advertisement, but Last Podcast on the Left did a fantastic covering of their overall history and their atrocities in their episode on the Batavia back in January.
Very true. I also think that Cameron does a nice job of referencing the massive reach that this company has with the historical references, but also makes it, despite this having been an 86 film, it still feels very relevant, where we all can imagine the evil corporation that does not let its workers go home on Christmas and insists on profit.
Yeah, puts the profit over the people.
Exactly. And I think that, It's a story as old as time, and I think Cameron does a really good job of balancing it, so even if you did miss that history lesson, you still know.
Oh, 100%. And it's not, I think part of the reason it's such a smooth transition is because we as an audience are just as in shock as Ripley, because it is so seamless. It doesn't catch on to us that, oh, it's been 57 years until they tell Ripley it's 57 years.
Exactly.
And then on top of that, they add the shocking chest burster scene early on.
Which is so good.
Blending the nightmare with the shock of that 57 years. But he does it in a way where it doesn't feel like it's a cheap nightmare. It feels necessary to shock us and Ripley as a character into the time travel that she's basically done.
And it's also, I mean, a little bit of a really nice misdirection, because honestly, when the movie starts, you already know what the bad guy is, because you've seen the first one, so that mystery is gone. That was the whole point of the first one. We already know, supposedly, what's happening here. And so having it be like, oh god, it's on the ship with them, is like a good little jump scare, and to get your heart going, and then change direction early.
Yeah.
It's very clever.
Oh, 100%. And honestly, like, we almost didn't get this movie because we almost didn't get Weaver back as her fee went up.
Understandably. Granted, that was balanced out by some of the other actors who had much lower rates. But this movie would not be the same without her. Like, she is, for the first 2 Alien films. Like, that is the main reason we watch her, and Cameron knew that. Cameron specifically wanted her back, and B, wrote her character to be the strongest version of herself she could. Yeah,
eventually actually collaborating with her to be like, okay, well, how should we tweak this? What would you say? Because she embodied the Ripley, the first movie. And honestly, they did, in early drafts, they wrote her out, and then they were telling Cameron, like, you might have to shift the story around to someone else if we can't get her back. I mean, even to the point where, like, Weaver stated that no one really wanted to touch a sequel once a good film has been made by someone like Ridley Scott. I don't think you want to go back.
I totally agree with her. It is kind of surprising that Weaver was, by the end of this, so invested that she was back and forthing with Cameron. She's famously not good at improv, and she's usually a very, like, by the script. She might have some ideas early on, she might have some, like, where's this character coming from, but she usually doesn't add lines. And she had more than one line that she insisted was added, but they had so little time to film it that they really had to, like, quickly put it in, and she was always a little uncomfortable with that.
But once she was told the new direction, she was interested in, which, I understand the reservations of not wanting to come back and redo us or be in a sequel that you're afraid is going to bomb.
Especially since the first one was very unique in having her be the only, like, survivor in such a unique way. Usually her character would either be the first one dead or, like, the traumatized last man standing, not the survivor, not the hero.
Yeah, not the... I mean, she still is dealing with trauma because... Oh,
absolutely, this is a horror movie.
Yeah, I mean, we saw with the nightmares, and on top of that, she's having to deal with the red tape, and it's not over for her. It's just a continuation of the bullshit she went through for the company previously.
Oh, for sure.
But it also helps build our attachment to her frustration, because we believe her story. We know her story.
We know.
But it's also revealing the rest of the world to her as we're learning the rest of the world.
Oh, for sure.
And it's made even more so tragic when we find out that her daughter's dead and she's all alone with Josie. Her legacy ends with her, and I mean, they do a good enough job of making it sad enough because she was supposed to be home on her daughter's birthday.
We were all so disappointed with her.
And yeah, I mean, just everything around her is just a bunch of dickheads. Like, the shady side of the company's goals, we already know what they're trying to do. But on top of that, they're just like, oh, by the way, we don't believe anything you say. It's you just seem out of your mind. You just blew up this station with a bunch of people in it.
Yeah.
Or the ship with a bunch of people in it. But I also wonder how many people in the company know of what they're trying to do, because we do see this later on of the suits guy that's kind of trying to be buddy-buddy with her. Is like, he's aware, so how much of this commission knows what's up? They're just trying to gaslight her into thinking she's crazy.
That would have been an interesting angle for future movies, but not where we went with this franchise, unfortunately.
No. But also giving us the possibility that there's a lot more out there. I mean, they mentioned that there's 300 explored worlds, including LV-426.
Great.
Which is the one from the first movie.
Yes.
And I do like that doesn't give us a reason to care about the planet just yet,
Mhm.
because the first 15 minutes is for Ripley.
Yes.
I mean, she's found out she's alone, missed 57 years of her life. Now she's stripped of her license and on probation.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just that digging of the further and further pit of, like, she has nothing left for her in this world.
Yes, absolutely.
And then, when they raise the stakes is a good moment, because they mention, oh, it's been terraformed for 20 years. And it's when they say there's 60 to 70 families. And it's the use of the word families that has the bigger impact.
Yes.
They could have said, oh, it's 158 or however many people.
Workers,
it's 158 people on the planet. But families, it's what makes it heavier and gives a greater meaning, and that initial connection to Ripley's call to action for this movie.
Absolutely. And what ends up being the main driving anxiety for the most of the audience.
100%.
Yeah, because don't get me wrong, Space Marines are cool, but I also do not care too much when they die. Children, prefer her not to be dead. She's cute.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of dead kids in this movie.
There's a lot of dead children in this movie. Yeah. Again, why was there toys for this?
Ripley's kid.
Yeah.
Well, an adult, though.
Dead child.
Yeah, I mean, hell, even the settlement's called Haley's Hope, and it sets the stakes because we finally return to LV-42, and it's not just this unrecognizable alien landscape. We have, I mean, there's still the inhospitability of the winds that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
But we finally have recognizable human architecture on this thing.
Finally, thank God.
And I do like that as we enter, we see the power loader in the background.
Yeah, nice touch. And I like that there's a callback to it, at the beginning of the movie, instead of waiting for the big reveal.
Mm-hmm. Well, and on top of that, they do go back to the original of, playing on the first movie of, well, we sent this person out to the middle of nowhere under company orders. Mm-hmm. Yeah, really, really digging it in as well with their focusing on their company logo, "We build better worlds," with their motto. It is a weird kind of movie too, or weird setup too, because it's a family trip kind of style of fighting brats in the background of it's their day-to-day work, but they're traveling together like that. Yes,
this was one of the ones that I had to sit and kind of think about, and I think I kind of see where Cameron was going here, where especially for the 80s, the idea of a colony, obviously you want to have your whole family. The idea is to populate the world, so you need families to do that. But also, surely one of the bonuses of working for this company would be that you don't have to have a babysitter. You can have your kids with you all the damn time. It's the equivalent of working from home.
Or medieval days. I mean, that's the family structure in medieval era is the male didn't go off to work. It was
everyone worked.
Yeah, everyone was working together, and so
yeah, and honestly, for a lot of people, that's very appealing. And so it kind of, in a weird sense, even though they never explain to you why the kids are riding around with their parents on this, what we know is going to be a very dangerous mission, it does, in if you think about it sort of sense, make a lot of logic that, yeah, these parents are I got told to drive out here and see what's over here, and then we're going to drive back, a little family vacation. Can't leave the kids home alone. They might tear up the carrots or something.
Well, I don't even think they have a garden. It's just
not yet. It's I think there's a quick line talking about what they're doing, and it's atmosphere stabilization or some bullshit at the moment.
Yeah, but they got donuts still.
They do have donuts, which I appreciate as a donut lover. I feel like it's important to have a fun food.
I guess. But I think more importantly what this scene does is it brings us back to the familiarity of the first movie while making it fresh of, okay, we're repeating the cycle again, because they're doomed the moment we see the facehugger.
Well, and the other thing that was really nice is one of my main complaints of a lot of horror films that is something that the 80s did well, and this one is an excellent example of, is there's not waiting around for the spooky or the action or the horror. This movie jumps right in with the surprise at the beginning with the dream scene. And a lot of newer, more modern horrors would probably have left a big gap between that dream scene and the next horror scene.
Yeah, well,
that's that type of build has become really popular. I love it when we just jump right into it.
Yeah, well, there is actually quite a bit of time between that scare and this. I mean, we got the whole court and everything setting up the base. But I get what you're saying. It's not as long as some of it, because with most modern horror films, they give you that first big kill in the first 5 minutes of the movie, the big massacre, and then it's
and
like,
you got
okay.
wait an hour almost for some of them.
Yeah, and that it just kind of lets everything drag out instead of just getting into the people to make them interesting.
Absolutely, and I think this one, which, again, this is kind of an 80s pacing thing. We see it a lot in not just horror, but also just in action or sci-fi movies in general of the 80s, is we have like a very steep but consistent ramp to build up for both action and horror. And I think this movie, that's one of its strongest points, is you're never bored. Well, you're never sitting around waiting.
And you also don't see the horror too, because it's like, we'll let her see the carnage of it.
But we don't need to, because we already know what happens. We know enough, yeah.
To keep it a mystery still, because we cut from that facehugger to, we know they've lost the base. They've lost contact, and so that brings Ripley in there of like, hey, you're the only other person alive that we know of that's been to this planet.
And she's like, abort mission, and they're like, no, bitch. It's worth a lot of money.
Well, it's like, we'll send in the Marines, you can just be up there. You don't have to go down with them.
Which, I mean, cool. I still feel like she should be sent home. Send this woman back to whatever shabble of a house is left.
Yeah.
Let her rest.
Well, and it's also, the thing that they do is they put that carrot in front of her of,
they do.
Well, we'll give you your license back, and it's that motivation of, we've dug this hole for her. This is like the only thing. Yes. The only thing that she has in life right now is Jonesy. But this license is like the next closest thing that she can have to returning to normalcy.
Oh, absolutely. And it all feels so meticulous and insidious. Every choice that's put in front of her is clearly not a choice.
Yeah.
Because they're even like, oh, you can just sit up in the sky and watch on the radio while the Marines do stuff.
Yeah.
Knowing damn well she probably won't be able to.
Yeah, you totally know that their whole goal is to get her out there, get her killed off. Boom, then they get the sample.
Yeah, that's the whole reason she hasn't gone home, is so she can't tell anybody what is out there.
That's actually an interesting idea, because the whole entire commentary they talked about, oh, she just never went down, and talking about like, oh, it's going to be a reality of like, it's going to hit her too hard to go back to Earth. She has nothing to return to down there. I like that idea of,
they don't want this getting leaked.
Yeah, it's not her getting down to the planet. It's them keeping an eye on her, keeping her within the station itself.
Absolutely. I guarantee you that even if all of this shit hadn't happened, she would have had to spend so much time training to get this license back that she already has. They would have managed to figure out some way to be like, oh, you can go, but your cat has to stay because, special cat license has changed in the last 50 years. Cat's part of the ship now.
Yeah.
They would have found a way to continuously postpone her getting the news out that, A, this company's shit, and B, there is a, murderous, alien insect thing taking over this planet.
Yeah.
Maybe don't go there.
Well, I mean...
And also don't come back from there, because that's, another fear.
Profits.
That ends up being the whole point of this movie.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing, too, with, the little world building that they develop, is that the Marines are a separate entity, and just the overall power of, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation being the de facto government in space exploration and mining, being able to hand out fees and revoke licenses for people to do anything to make a living within their system.
Absolutely. And can we talk about the design of these Space Marines?
Yes, because, well, first off, the vessel itself is really cool.
It is pretty damn cool. The design in general of everything here is really damn cool, and a huge part of that is because Cameron is a huge fan of practical props. And so everything looks so cool, because the special effects for this movie were mostly led by John Richardson and his team from Stan Weston Studios. They made so many miniatures, and yes, a couple of the flying ship scenes do look a tiny bit silly.
Yes.
But I love them. But also everything else looks so damn good.
Well, and part of that is because they brought together Sid Mead for the ships and Ron Cobb for the airlock lab and colony control area. Cobb, if you remember, we talked a bit about in our Conan the Barbarian episode.
Absolutely.
But he did also work on the original Alien, though uncredited. Mead, on the other hand, worked on Blade Runner, Tron, 2010, the year we made contact. I mean, we've got these big names getting involved in these projects to really bring this world to life. And what I like is that the architecture and designs are different. They keep a lot of the rough angles, but they feel industrial instead of sterile, like how the first one felt like more of a medical lab than
Absolutely.
Than what we see with this, even though it's a very cold architecture.
No, I think that the designs in general, where the first one felt almost a little bit extra futuristic in certain aspects of like, oh, this magic medicine lab or this, the science that we don't understand. This one, yes, it's, definitely futuristic technology we don't fully understand. And yet, it's so close to what we already have that you don't really need to worry about anything.
Yeah, it feels almost brutalist at times, but not in concrete. It's out of metal.
And there's so much that is reminiscent of, like, how mine shafts and mining operations are depicted in movies. There's a lot of, like, just industrial basics stuff. And part of that is because a lot of these sets and props were reused from other things.
Or they were actually shot in a power plant.
Or they were shot in an actual power plant, which explains the grates.
Yep.
And then a lot of this, again, like, most of Cameron's stuff, if you want to, you are more than welcome to go look up what bits were filmed and shot where, because a lot of those bits were just left to rot when he was done, and then ended up in other movies.
Yeah. And they also pulled from other bits too, like that.
Because of course they did.
Yeah, the destruction of the mining colony.
Yep.
It's a lot of broken up parts from other sets that they just like, well, it's already destroyed, so can we just have it?
Yeah, can we already have your blown up model? And they're like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But even then, the Marines are such a different group of characters from what we've seen, because the last movie was working men.
Or
working people. This is fully just, that's their only purpose. They are
military. Oh yeah, and I love that, with the exception of one poor actor, everyone who is a Marine spent a boot camp before the movie preparing, learning how to hold guns, because even though there wasn't real ammo, the blanks were still dangerous. In fact, they may or may not have put a hole through someone else's set. But them being able to get together before recording and build this, not only just the movements and be familiar with the weapons and how to act, it also helped build this camaraderie and otherness of, like, there's us and them.
Oh yeah, well, and I think that really shows with especially the two female Marines, where it's
Absolutely.
Like, it would have been easy enough just to have a pack of sausages in deep sleep. Now,
Absolutely.
Now,
this is the future.
Well, the two women are just one of the boys, basically, and goddamn, one of them got muscles.
Oh, absolutely. And also, I love that they, without doing too much, build up kind of who they are right from the get-go. They wake up, they're immediately doing pull-ups and trying to out-impress each other, and they're ripping jokes.
Cameron said they had to be aggressively American. Even if they were British, they had to be able to do aggressive American mentality.
And I think that works really well, because they feel so abrasive, especially compared to Ripley's character, where she is much more concerned. She also is just a softer person in general. She's much more, normal in a lot of senses.
Yeah, well, they make sure that she's out of it because she's not in on any of the jokes. She's sitting at the end of the table with the officer and the company man.
Absolutely.
So it's these three people who are the head of the operation, but they're not one of the common folk.
I also love that because Cameron had them take this much more aggressive American Marines sort of mentality, the way they handle all of the missions, all of the warnings that are given to them, not only by their commanding officer, but by Ripley herself, they don't take seriously at all. And I think that adds a lot to the suspense, that, because, again, we already know what the villain of the story is. There's no surprise in what the alien can do, the basic life cycle of the alien.
Well, that part of the life cycle.
Yes.
We haven't
gotten to the full thing.
Yeah.
But the dangerous part, the most aggressive part, we aren't concerned or worried about learning, oh, that's the scary, or oh, that's the gross part. We already know that part. We know that these idiots are not going to stand a chance against the alien bug. But their bravado really kind of hammers home and helps the audience kind of mirror Ripley's concern and worry.
And even then, just building her tension, Ripley's tension as well, with Bishop being the synthetic, and honestly, still cool bit of the knife in the hand game. But I do like that what they do with Bishop this time around is that they make him a much softer character, where he is much more.
He reminds me a lot more of how Star Trek handled immortal or robotic people, where it's more of a curiosity and a scientific base, not nearly as aggressive, much more soft and odd, other, but not necessarily unapproachable.
Yeah, and even then, the way he addresses himself, he's like, it has a bit more humanity to him, where he's like, I prefer artificial person.
Yes. I also love that the actor did suggest, like, maybe I should wear contacts when there's an alert or a notification on my character.
Mm-hmm.
And Cameron flat out told him, no, I think you'll end up being scarier than the actual villain if you've got glowing eyes.
Well, it's also setting up not just the aliens, but the enemy from within.
Absolutely.
Where the last movie we saw the synthetic was, even though we know on our side the company man is truly a villainous guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a nice little rearranging of the moments. It's not tweaking it slightly like Cameron had issues with. It is drastically changing these elements, but they're familiar elements.
Oh, for sure. I also love that right from the get-go, our robot friend, it feels friendly enough. He might not be best friends, but you feel comfortable and safe enough with him. Like, he is familiar enough that builds and builds and builds through the rest of the movie, which means at the end, when we get the big reveal of what happens, you forget for a hot second that he's fine.
Yeah, for the most part.
I mean, probably not comfortable, but he's not goner.
Yeah, but also it does bring up some questions for me.
Mm-hmm.
Is what exactly do the Marines do outside of this? Because I know they mention bug hunts, and later on, like they say they haven't come across any life form like this. But they also say, before they even land on the planet, they call them xenomorphs.
Yes.
So this implies that
they at least know.
No, it implies that there's other alien life out there, but these Marines' job is just straight up to kill whatever they come across.
Oh, 100%. I do think that, like, the rest of the Alien, and especially the Alien Terminator franchise as a whole, kind of sort of answers this question about, like, well, what else is out there? Especially when you look at, like, the background bits, like the trophy walls from the Terminators. Not Terminator. Predator, sorry.
Those are it's crossover, though, so that's not...
I know, but they were crossover with intention of world building. Like, there's purposefully, like, prehistoric creatures up on the wall. There's purposefully Alien or other franchise from Universal. I believe Universal, I'm not sure. There's other, like, movie references in the backgrounds of most of those movies.
Yeah.
That are supposed to kind of lead to this idea of, like, well, all of the realities are real. It just so happens that these alien bugs are the worst ones.
That we know of.
That we know of right now for the second movie.
Yeah, but I do think it's funny that basically these guys are just glorified exterminators.
I also love that they regularly talk about how, like, good they are. They've gone so many times out there. They've killed so much stuff. Mm-hmm. This is old hat to them. They're not worried at all. And yet, they are so terribly ill-prepared for what is actually down there.
Well, because they're prepared for what they're used to.
Exactly.
But I also like that when we're trying to get them up to snuff, they're making a big joke of it. I mean, it's just...
Which is maybe the part of that is least believable of how we, especially in the American cinema, have been led to believe Marines operate. One would think that highly trained, skilled bug killers in this instance would be more interested in, like, learning about what it is that they're killing.
Well, Cameron did say that he found out later on what he wrote was more army-like than Marines.
The Marine. Which, it kind of ended up working, though, because, again, this is not real. This is not actually Marines. They're Space Marines. Woo! Mm-hmm. And also, like, this is in the future. This is also kind of in the past, because the future isn't as advanced as we probably would assume it is in some aspects. So, like, you know, this is all for funsies. And so you don't really notice until you sit and really think about this movie. Mm-hmm. And even then, it doesn't matter, because these are just a bunch of idiots, and they prove that over and over again.
Very much so. But also in this scene, too, I like that Ripley, when it shows the power loader in action, mm-hmm. Chekhov's gun, it's going to come back later. This is the second time we've seen it.
Absolutely. But
I like that he builds Ripley up in trying to help, giving her something to do, and showing that she's capable of something outside of, like, what the Marines can do.
I love that
or alongside the Marines.
I love that Cameron didn't wait for the audience to remember how good and capable Ripley is as a character. He continuously builds her up, even though she's just had this terrible experience, and now she's being told she can't do anything. She is still a doer and a self-sufficient person. So she's going to figure out a way to find something to do. And that adds to her character, because later, like, she's going to pick action. I think if she just sat around and let other people do all of the stuff freehand, she would have felt a little strange.
Yeah, well, it'd also be like, of course she can use the power loader. It's establishing that she has the skills to do it to begin with.
And the other thing that honestly works even better is technically you don't have to have seen the first Alien movie. All of the information you need about her is presented in this film.
Mm-hmm.
So you know she's proficient with this tool, even if you haven't seen the first one.
But you say that, and yeah, I can agree with it to a point.
It's better if you've seen the first one.
But
don't get me wrong.
It definitely shows a different side of her compared to just a working woman in the first one, alongside these other people that are just trying to make a living.
No, I completely agree that together they are the strongest form of themselves. Like, yes, Aliens is the best of the franchise in my opinion, but it would not be as good without the first one. However, I appreciate that Cameron covered his bases enough that if someone, like, hadn't seen the first one for some reason, or remembered it so poorly that they couldn't possibly remember some of the key moments of the movie, you didn't have to necessarily see it. But it is better. The character is much more rounded. The world is much more interesting if you've seen the first, which I think is how all sequels should be. Yeah,
no, it's supposed to be, you have this one good movie and then you build the world outside of that.
Exactly. And he even managed to build the character, which is honestly very difficult.
Yeah, instead of just dropping, we're going to be doing a universe from the get-go, which...
Or even having the same character over and over again. Like, a good example of good world building, but not necessarily good character building, would be the Riddick series. Love the Riddick series, but Riddick does not change. That's kind of the whole point. But at the same time, like, the world builds, and if you've seen them all, they all kind of conglomerate together to make this really cool, terrible, futuristic world. But the main character, the reoccurring character, he's the same throughout the whole thing. Whereas this one, Ripley does evolve and change, and she grows from the first movie all the way to the end of this movie.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. I mean, she just keeps evolving and becoming deeper as a character.
Absolutely.
And I have to rewatch this third and fourth one, because I think in the third one she does, but the fourth one's just so different.
It's very different, yeah.
But then we do get the fun little cheesy model bit of the express elevator to hell.
Yeah, that's funny. That is funny.
Which there are some little details here that are missed, like the sticker on the side of their car, or not their car.
They're car-esque.
Of their ship, of their landing ship, is that whole thing, or it's their company logo, and it's the bug stomper. We endanger species.
Hilarious. Try harder.
Yeah, maybe be better at your job. But
seriously.
I do like that they give so much shit to the officer, because of everyone, he is 100% the rookie, but he's in charge of it. It's the same kind of stuff you see in a military family with, like, my brother when he became an officer.
Yeah.
My other brother, my dad, who were enlisted, were giving him so much shit for, like,
yeah.
Oh, did they wipe your butt for you too, Mr. Officer?
Yeah, I do think they really did capture that essence of, like, teasing, but also, like, trying to better each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they went too soft with it. I think the dark humor that they have really helps lighten this part of the movie, because there's going to hit a line where there's no more humor, and that's needed.
No, I will say, there is a line where there's no more humor.
But the Marines add a lot, which kind of help divide the movie up.
Exactly, and I'll get into that, because there's one character who...
Yeah.
He has some of the best one-liners in this movie.
Oh boy, does he ever. And he was the least prepared.
Yeah. But again, it's like how they show how armed they are with everything. And like you brought up that they were all trained with weapons, and it was actually Al Matthews who played their leader, Sergeant Apone, who was actually a Marine and experienced prior to the movie, and making it a point about trigger discipline and making sure everyone was even aware how dangerous planks are on screen.
And I do think that you can tell that there was maybe not the most accurate training, because again, I think Cameron accidentally filmed the Army instead of the Marines.
They're also space weapons.
They are space weapons, and they're fake weapons. Like, half of these guns are made up of camera mounts along with a big fake gun, or a gun from different countries and time periods that are, like, mashed together.
Yeah.
And, like, that's cool, because you don't really recognize anything. They look big and awkward, but powerful and cool.
Yeah, they got a machine gun with a grenade launcher on it.
And then, eventually we're just gonna start duct taping shit together. Like, it doesn't matter if the guns are realistic, because they feel like they are holding them and handling them correctly, while still giving us the movie aspect of, like, showing it off.
Yeah, it's like a good kit bashing of, like, you throw a bunch of stuff together and you forget that your base object was a CD player.
Absolutely, and I love that even though it's not super realistic that they're going through, like, unassembling and reassembling all of their gear right before they're about to, like, land on this planet, I think it's good for the audience, because now we kind of have an idea of what arsenal they have and why they feel cocky. They have a lot of guns.
They got the firepower if they wanted it.
They really do, and, like, I love also that they throw out a few that you just know off the get-go. There's a flamethrower. I know what that is. I'm 100% approved of flamethrower and grenade launcher. What does this mystery space gun do? No idea, but that's okay.
You should watch Ballerina.
I will.
I won't say anything, but there's a flamethrower in it.
I do love a flamethrower. It's one of my favorite weapons.
Go watch Ballerina. That's all I'm going to say. But I do like that even though like they're terraforming, everything still feels a bit off because there's all the scattered rubble and there's no human life. The colony, while larger, still feels tiny compared to the rest of the planet. So
yes,
it adds this level of like claustrophobia as we start getting into it further and further. And there's some really cool shots in this too, where there's a miniature against a green screen back. And what they did is they took a flashlight, and where the people are aiming their flashlights, they put a flashlight on the miniature, so that way
it looks good. And granted, when we were rewatching this, my husband did sort of like tease that what an 80s thing for the future space technology to scan a room with a narrow beam laser, when now we have a device where I hold it above my head and I click a single button and it scans the whole room. But also I was like, yeah, but also the laser looks cool on camera. My 3D camera looks boring on camera.
I was talking to our scan team a few months ago. They have drones that they do that now too.
I know, it looks so cool, and also a lot less jump scare because I spend a lot of my time going, where's the person taking the picture? Ah, there they are.
Ooh, spooky.
But it's usually because our device is supposed to edit out the human, and it misses maybe 1 in 10. And so you're walking your way through this virtual building and then jump scared by the top half of someone's head, looking straight into my soul.
Yeah. But there are some other things with this movie too that I forget. They talk about like it took them like 7 days to get out there.
Yeah.
Like, because like it's going to take them 14 days to relay of like, oh, we're supposed to meet up at this time. It's going to be 14 days for them to get out there. While they're searching, there's a bunch of hamsters still alive, which... That's
true.
Later on, these hamsters die. They just leave a bunch of hamsters to die. How careless, how cruel of them.
True. Okay.
Also, what are hamsters doing out here? Like, they're not a good... Like, did they bring pets with them on this?
They must have. I mean, they brought children. But yeah, hamsters are not useful for anything in particular. Yeah. Like, I could maybe make...
Lab tests.
Maybe, but we don't usually use hamsters because they're not, genetically compatible with us.
And they also die by farting, so...
They do, bless their little tiny hearts. But also, like... And if you were making an argument for a settlement thing, normally we'd want to bring something both hardy and consumable, like maybe, unfortunately, a guinea pig would make more sense from that. Rats even would make more sense. Literally any other animal.
Yeah.
Rabbits even would have made more sense.
Yeah, well, and there's other parts too in this that, like, it's not just the hamsters either.
I do feel like maybe the hamsters were just the only animal that Cameron could get a hold of.
Yeah, to show that, okay, I get what their point is. It's supposed to feel like everyone left in a hurry because there's a soggy, half-eaten bagel, which...
True.
Or donut.
Also, we don't technically see the hamster dead, and one might argue that hamsters are incredibly resilient, even though they scare fart themselves to death. It could be fine. Hamsters are mildly cannibalistic and will eat just about anything, and expert escape artists. That hamster might be fine.
I'm gonna say no, because, as they said, the
glass
is the size of Nebraska.
True. If it wasn't for the fact that the place explodes in the end, I would still argue that the hamster could still be fine.
It's a bunch of dead hamsters. And how many hamsters? What other pets survive? What is the size limit on a xenomorph? How small can they get?
Well, see, okay, it is implied that the xenomorph larvae part comes in a one-size-fits-all face situation.
No, not really. Because that's the thing is, every xenomorph adapts to its host.
True.
So, like, there's a limit, because, like, we see, granted, I'm pulling in later movies.
Which are a little bit more bullshitty.
But Prometheus, that facehugger...
is different.
Is that the original facehugger size, and they've just moved down to this size because it's easier to survive, and you don't need to there's not massive hosts they're trying to attach to.
Maybe, Maybe. I do feel like once you reach a certain size down limit, you just aren't good at
Give
stuff.
me hamster xenomorphs. I'm trying to get to hamsters. How terrifying would that be?
It
These
wouldn't.
little tiny, like, not little tiny insects, basically, with acid blood that you stomp on them. You
People
get
would
acid on them.
people would keep them as pets. 110% they would be put in little tiny cages and kept as pets.
Hamster alien.
Hamster
xenomorphs.
Hamster xenomorphs would 110% become the hot new pet.
Does it have to be mammalian based?
It is implied, yes, because of the body heat.
Oh, right.
The digestive tract, body heat, and blood are required.
Yeah.
That is implied, never directly stated. It's kind of hobbled together from some of the books and talking with directors and writers.
Get me an elephant xenomorph.
That would be terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, the queen is already gigantic. Imagine the queen of an elephant-sized one. She'd be building-sized. She'd be awful.
Matt Ditterman, make it happen. Dungeon Crawler Carl, do it.
He might. You can't put it past him.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I get the whole point of it. It's supposed to make it feel like everything moved in a rush. It's just one of those, like, little details. The more you think about it, it's like...
Well, and also hamsters are just... They make just enough noises to be a little bit spooky if you don't know they're there. They run their little squeaky wheels.
Yeah.
You're like... They add a good ambiance.
But with how everything else is trash, you'd think that these things wouldn't be alive.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah. But in their search, we do get across the final sole survivor. And, I mean, it's to imply that everyone is dead. Which, honestly, I do like how how Cameron did a very good job of writing in, like, these little bits that come in later where they bring up, okay, there's a bunch of facehuggers in these tubes. Mm-hmm. It shows one of them swimming around still. But when they are writing down the notes, it's like, okay, there's all these other dead ones, 2 alive.
Which is a good little, like, nod to the main problem with the first one is human curiosity killed the cat, essentially.
Yeah, no, exactly what it is, because you know that they went and got more of these. This facility has labs of of the facehuggers.
Yes.
So
and they're keeping them alive. Stop that.
Yeah, the company is evil.
The company is 100% evil. And it is a theme that I wish was a little bit more strongly emphasized as the Alien series had progressed. Granted, I understand why we switched, because the, like, crossovers did better. They were more interesting, they had more to build from, they also advertised better, they had better toys. So, like, I get why we changed the franchise away from, like, the hubris of men's creativity and curiosity. But also, like, it was kind of a cool, like, underlying dialogue of, like, man, this company is the whole reason everyone's fucked. All the time.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, even in the newest one.
Even in the newest, yeah, I mean, and I get it. One must adapt, but
yeah,
I liked it.
I also like this build-up to Newt is so stressful because we know where the last encounter went. So, like, when we see movement, it's like, okay, stuff's gonna hit the fan. But, like, when she's still alive and, like, just living in these places where clearly we have a size limit of the xenomorphs, the facehuggers haven't gotten to her, and, like, the xenomorphs are too big to get through these the smaller ducts and crevices where she's been hiding.
Exactly.
But the moment when everyone is, like, trying to grab her, and it's Ridley who approaches and putting her at ease with the motherly approach, goes a little back to what I talked about in our Silent Hill episode years and years ago, of that it's usually in horror films, it's the stereotypical women roles that let them survive because they have that empathy, whereas, like, the 2 female Marines, while badasses, stereotypical male roles,
and they play into it. And I also think, just in general, having this be the next arc for Ripley is really smart, because we've already had, like, as an audience, you are already mourning with her the loss of her freedom, her daughter, her home, and this is a new thing to cling to, even if it might be temporary.
Yeah, and we get that development a lot more because
we sure do.
We get this whole tense build-up, and then we get the little reprieve of, like, okay, it's just a little girl. Well, what actually happened here? Because no one's here. How is this one person still alive?
And they do a great job of making her look super, like, unkept. She's got her hair all matted. She is covered in dirt. And it's done in a really good cinematic way where, like, okay, we could clean her up. We could get her home. Like, she could be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, it adds that level of believability of, like, okay, she's not this nice, clean little girl that's been just
Yeah.
kind of like surviving. She's been living in the dirt and the grime to get away from all of this.
Absolutely.
And even then, like, it even continues building the mystery of, like, okay, well, all the colonists, they're in one location. What the hell are they doing there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just this whole building up of, like, we're getting to the point in the movie where we built up so much suspense, and we have to hit the unknown because Ripley doesn't even know what's going on. She doesn't know about their territory, which is why, while we like extended cuts usually,
yes,
the director's cut of Alien makes this scene a little, if you watch the director's cut of Alien, it hints a little bit at this, but I think it makes it a little bit less interesting because we're like, okay, well, we've seen one do it to a person before. Well, now if you didn't know that scene before, now you're watching this and it's like, okay, this is a nest. This what's happening? How is this going to change? Like, we don't know where they're going for this because now we have this farm of chest bursters. I mean, it just gets right into the action. Like, it's taken us a little bit to build up from that initial scare, but now we're right into it.
Absolutely.
But also, at the same time, again, most of this stuff is happening off screen.
True.
So we're having to, like, interpret, and like Guillermo del Toro said with Pan's Labyrinth, it's better to have your audience imagine what's happening instead of giving it to them directly, and it helps build that chaos as everything gets wiped out. One, it's also less gory.
It is.
Because we had the shock at the beginning, and it builds the tension. And also, it's said in the creature design part of the documentary, you don't create fear with gore, you create disgust.
Very true. And also, it lets us maintain the practical props that were the chest bursters in the scene and the eggs. All of these were real and they look good still. And I think if we had continued on with them here, it would have lost a little bit of that luster.
Yeah, and part of that, too, is the goal for this one wasn't that gore or that horror element. It was to build the terrifying fear of just the sheer numbers of these things.
Absolutely.
Which also led to the change of the design of the creature to have the costumes more mobile, and they had to remove that previous dome because it was too fragile for what Giger had originally envisioned.
Absolutely.
And also in changing this, there's the different style of filming that Cameron went with. There's not many close-ups, if any, of the creatures.
No.
Instead of focusing on larger shots to actually show the horde of them.
It also helps a lot by having his main focus of the screen pulled back just far enough for you to see the peripheral of them, that you get that sense of terror of it hiding in any corner.
Yes, and that's the thing is it's also just not numbers. They're clearly smarter in this one, as we see later on with the machine gun fire. Yeah, they've got the masses, but they're still trying to figure stuff out. And his thought was that first alien wasn't as smart. It's only been alive for 24 hours.
True.
Where can we push these two? But I am a little curious.
Okay.
How would it have looked if Giger had worked on them in the design as well as everything else? Because he wasn't consulted on the movie.
No, he was not.
And it makes sense with Cameron mentioning it didn't occur to him to work with Giger. And
I can understand. He feels like the designs are already set.
Yeah, he laid the groundwork for the xenomorphs and their hives, so he had a bunch of that stuff going. But the other thing, too, is most of this movie is more people-oriented. It's not about the creatures.
And I think you can see that, especially in the spots that we can even see the alien, I don't want to call it architecture, but like the adaptations and morphs they've done to the mining facility, or just the facility in general, I should say. Instead of having that almost sensual design that we had in the first one where it all felt too big and too fluid and very organic.
Some would say it looks average. Some would say
it
moderate.
Very genital in both directions for a lot of the design. And again, that was on purpose. We talked about that with the first one. This one spends so much more effort in having it be human-centric that it feels laid on top of, and you do lose some of that original sexiness in a way, and I'm not mad at that.
No.
I do feel like if he had brought in, even though it would have been very cool to see how maybe he would have like updated or redesigned some of these elements, it would have lost the human horror element.
Well, yeah, that, and I also think because Cameron has a vision, and I mean, we talked about this in episode 36 and 37 of Titanic, is that he's a big old nerd.
He is a huge nerd.
But also, he knows so much about the entire process of design and creation that at some points people get frustrated because like, okay, you know what's better, just do it.
Yeah, people do get frustrated working with him.
So I think they would have butted heads the entire time. I mean, it happened with the original cinematographer who kept trying to light the movie like a traditional, like in the traditional fashion of like everything's well enough lit, and he's like, no, that's not going to do it, and so they had to part ways.
Part ways is a gentle way. I've read an article saying Cameron straight up fired the man.
Yeah. Well, and I also think part of the reason it's successful too, even though it does change, is that Cameron had that sensibility in changing things or altering it just enough because he said,
yes,
don't make your own at the expense of what people like. So he didn't really fundamentally change the xenomorphs outside of what they originally were. He
True.
just tweaked them enough to work for what he needed for this movie.
And I would argue that even though Cameron is a huge nerd, and I have no doubt hoped that people would scrutinize his movie to no end like he does to his own work, I think that when it comes down to it, from watching the first one and then going to the second one, unless you are watching them back-to-back DVD style, you have enough of a breath between the movies generally that you know kind of roughly what the xenomorphs look like. Slight changes to their character design feel more like just the advancement of the movie times as opposed to a full character redesign.
Exactly.
Like, I did not recognize that there was huge changes made, minus that they were more flexible, but I knew that was probably prop design this time than how it was done the first time. And I didn't even question that, oh, there's a big difference until I had, like, sat down and was starting to look at them side by side.
Yeah, it's not like going from the first one and then going from first to then third one where they have the dog xenomorph.
Exactly.
Or the fourth one where they have the newborn, which is,
silly.
Yeah, it's something else.
It's silly. No, I feel like this one does a good job of having that progression feel much more natural and less of, like, a writing stunt and more of just a simulation of, like, we have better technology. We're building better models. To make them spookier, to make them curl up, we have to change just a little bit. They have to be a little thinner. They have to be a little bit more nimble.
Yeah.
The tail can't be quite as long.
You gotta get it to work.
Exactly.
But I like that all this ideation leads to this just absolute bloodbath that we don't really see.
No, it's hilarious in a way, though, because you almost feel justified for Ripley in this.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear the bloodbath, you can have the screens, and yes, it's tense and it feels very flickering, but you feel like your two characters you care about are safe, and they kind of sort of are having what's coming to them.
Well,
You don't care about them much.
You don't care about them. They're cannon fodder, but
Yeah, they really are.
They're another cog in the machine. But I think it's just also made worse because they're underneath the reactor. It's like
yes. Well, and I think most audience, the frustration was really never meant to be with the Marines. You knew they were cannon fodder from the moment they set foot on screen.
Yeah, it's the product of the Vietnam War. They're there to die for
their
Weyland-Yutani government.
Yeah. And, like, you know that, and, like, yes, you can like them. I think their design is really good. I think each of the actors, with the exception of one who showed up late because his original actor got switched out.
Real quick, all these Marines, too, cool in the design. They gotta update their costumes and give them their own personal touch.
They did.
Again, playing off the Vietnam War, so.
Yeah, and so, like, I love that there's those details. As a detailed-oriented movie watcher, I enjoyed kind of piece it together. I liked listening to everyone talk about, like, what they changed to theirs, what they think what inspiration they pulled from, whether it was different cultures or if it was from their own personal experience. However, I knew they were going to die. They're not terribly likable in, like, an actual personal sense. But your main frustration, your main anger, ends up being their idiot in command.
Yeah.
Because he's too cautious with everything, and he's too
by the books is what it is.
He's very much too by the books, and also he does not seem to actually see his group as actual people. He keeps seeing everything like the game that it is, and granted that's where a lot of these really great one-liners come from in this movie, but it's that frustration that builds that again points back to Ripley being, like, you feel so confident in her and her frustration. She feels so much like a mirror of your own feelings that it's really hard to like these guys, even though you feel a little bad they're dead.
Well, because it's given the whole thing that the boiler's gonna blow, and it's building that claustrophobia of what they're in. I mean, there's that line, they're coming out of the goddamn walls!
It's such a good line.
Yeah.
Such a good line.
And then it's up to Ripley, the civilian, to go and try and get a rescue mission together, And honestly, I do love that the officer is trying to order her around like she's under his jurisdiction. She doesn't give a shit.
She gives no shit. I'm surprised you were able to order anyone else around either.
Yeah.
They barely listened to him the first place. The moment he said he'd only really done simulations and one other, expedition, and it wasn't that exciting.
Yeah. It's also a good way to, get us down to just 3 Marines.
It is, and granted, again, I like the Marine characters. We are mostly just surprised any of them live, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah. Well, and it's also because we've had that action, we have to build the conflict internally as well. We've already kind of had the little start of it of Ripley ignoring orders or directions, and Ripley is just straight up like, yep, let's nuke it, get the fuck out of here.
And you as the audience feel exactly the same, because a lot of us, one of the fun things of a horror movie is to figure out, what you would do in the situation, especially a monster-based horror film, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of us are in the same mindset of Ripley. Just nuke the goddamn planet and be done with it.
Yeah, and the company man is like, it's still worth money. We have to weigh the consequences of this. We can't just nuke it.
Oh, he's so in the way.
Yeah, but the way they build up them being stuck on the planet, too, is a very well built up that, okay, they've got this colony of aliens or xenomorphs.
Yeah.
They're also kind of patrolling elsewhere, so the guys that you had away from everything that you thought was safe,
not safe.
Nope. And it gets to one of my favorite lines of the movie when that plane or when that ship crashes.
Yeah.
That's it. Game over, man. Game over.
And it's
Whoopsies.
It's a dumb line. It's a dumb line, but it's a very good line. It's a very quotable line. And also, the way the actor portrays it is so good. It's so funny.
Hudson is great. And that's the thing is, his comedic relief, while funny, isn't off-putting.
No.
Because, he takes, that's the thing. Cameron said that he took it seriously. Don't be campy, even though Hudson is slightly over the top for it.
But, in a, real person sort of way.
His one-liners from the ship come from a place of what feels like genuine panic.
Yeah.
It makes him more than just a guy who's liking the sound of his own voice.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, it's it's that same mentality of, and I still don't like Jar Jar Binks, but
sure.
I will compare it to in Star Wars Episode 1, when they're trapped at the bottom of that lake or ocean.
Yeah.
And Qui-Gon is just like, the Force will provide for us. And Jar Jar's like, the fuck you talking about? This ship is falling apart. Everything's dead. Our ship's entirely dead. There's that genuine panic that's there.
Yes. It's almost the audience interpretation of what's happening. And having that be seen in the film adds to your frustration with the whole situation, which I think helps build this as a horror movie, as opposed to just constantly running, fighting for our lives. We are also now having to deal with these other idiots who are in the way of just an obvious solution. While
building up the pattern of the xenomorphs. Newt tells them that they're mostly nocturnal. Mostly, not always.
Yep.
So it gives that that ebb and flow of when they can be active and whatnot, or when they have to be prepared. And then building up the 17 days of how absolutely fucked they are. They have to survive against these things that know they're there for 14 days.
That's a long time.
And then the continual build-up of mistrust of Bishop in the lab because of the last movie. And also showing, it's another scene of building up Ripley of being on par with the Marines with her planning. It's just she's on the civilian side of things.
Absolutely.
But it's important to have that because it brings back her leadership from the first movie, where she was second in command on this just mining ship.
Yeah, but still second in command. She's a natural leader.
Second in command until he dies.
And then she's the only man. But
yeah. But I do also like that on top, while there is this, she has this little romantic tension between her and Hicks.
Yeah.
Where it's not super heavy, but it's just okay, it's kind of building up this new family where okay, she's got Newt, well, now she also needs a companion for herself. She can't just be a mother 24/7.
Yeah, especially on this hellhole of a planet.
Yeah, hey, trauma brings people together, as they say.
It really does.
Nothing says who else are you gonna relate to? What did you get out of this of oh yeah, you had a tough day? I had to fight these motherfuckers twice, and their queen.
True. And while I think the way they handle Newt and Ripley's relationship is definitely the strongest and you have the most invested in it. Her relationship with the other guys and just the people around her in general gives the feeling that the last few who make it, you do start to truly care about whether or not they all can make it off this ship.
Yeah.
Because you knew the Marines were going to be fire cannon. You purposefully didn't want to get too attached. They're fun, but they're going to die. Well, now we've killed a lot of them, so that it plants those seeds of hope, which are important because this is a horror movie, and we do have to squash some of those.
Yeah, we gotta bring up the horror a little bit.
Just a bit.
But it makes it even more horrific because we have this little reprieve in the medbay for Newt, giving her and Ripley that real scene to actually connect, other than, okay, she calmed her down this little bit, letting Newt know that she also has bad dreams. Mm-hmm. And it's the only ones so far who have gone through the horror of all this.
True. Yeah, everyone else's is their first time.
Well, and what also makes it great, too, is when filming, they were mostly the last people on stage. Mm-hmm. So they had that time to actually really bond. And it's a quite sweet, nurturing moment of passing the locator to kind of give this comforting idea of she'll always have a way to track where she's at. So that way, if she runs off again, they can know whether she's safe, if she's moving about. Mm-hmm. But I also like the story of how they found Newt and her acting, because she is an actress, but they just found her eating lunch and they liked her so much that because she hadn't acted before, so it's that amateur, like, just very innocent quality she had. Yeah. Because most of the children who auditioned smiled after every line because they were doing commercials at the time.
Yeah, and honestly, it ended up working out really well. She had her lines delivered really naturally. She is both really charming as a child, but also just annoying enough to, like, really kind of ramp things up, which I honestly think for a child in a horror movie, it's kind of important for them to hit a little bit of a nerve, because you're trying to focus on whatever problem or task they are. Kids can't help 9 times out of 10. They're just in the way.
It's another responsibility.
Exactly. And I think this was a very smart choice in how well she was able to balance those two things. She's still cute, even by the end, even after all of the time she yells, "Turn left!" Like, you still find her endearing, and yet, she still managed to portray some pretty good scares, and also some pretty good annoyance, all at the same time. So it's pretty good.
See, I never found her annoying. She never hit that nerve with me.
She got just enough in a couple of spots. And it's intentional, right? Like, it's intentional that her yelling is to add to the chaos and the fear and just the confusion. Just
high-pitched child screaming in general, I guess.
Yeah, or she gets more and more vocal, which is good because it's showing that as the movie progresses, the character's becoming more and more confident in Ripley's ability to protect her and keep her safe.
Well, and it's also them realizing that they need each other, of, like, it's that codependency of, like, we need both of each other to survive.
Absolutely, but she kind of gets a little bit close, partially because she's a child actor, and, like, the lines given are short. It's also a horror movie, and we're in the middle of running away. And so she gets just enough lines to get so close to, hey, listen, Link. And it's never over the top. She's never the most annoying child on the planet, which some horror movies get a little bit too close to, or even just completely obliterate that line, and you just hate the kid and aren't super upset if they live or not. She toes that line perfectly, where you do feel like she is trying to contribute. She was trying to, like, keep herself alive. She's not worthless, like, I don't know.
I'm doing my part.
Or even, like, don't get me wrong, great actress, but War of the Worlds, the new one.
Dakota Fanning, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she did a great job acting, but her character is literally carried from one point to the other, and you get a little annoyed with her lack of independence.
Yeah, because she has, well, it's not like BB in Death Stranding where it's attached to you.
Yeah.
And, like, the crying, okay, never mind, that's not a good reference.
Yeah. Like, and it is a very difficult balance to hit, and it's one that most horror movies, especially the ones that have kids in them, have to at some point try and get close to, because otherwise your child character disappears, and you kind of forget about them, and then, oh yeah, I forgot they're in danger, whoops, I was busy doing other stuff, or they're too annoying. This is a really great balance.
Yeah, no, and I think they do a good job with, like, giving us those little bits of nuggets of emotion to actually make us give a shit about every character, and not, like, it's the opposite of the Marines where we had so little time with them.
Yep.
These little, or, like, we have a decent amount of time. Actually, we have a decent amount of time with them. It's just there are so many of them, and there's just that little bit too obnoxious.
And it even balances out our bad guy, because now we've had even more time with him. He's even more obnoxious, and not just annoying, he's actively very dangerous now.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer self-centered and like maybe he can figure this out once he sees the horrors for himself. No, he's still the stupidest man on this planet.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, there's 3 men on this planet now.
And he's easily the stupidest.
Yeah, because he's so focused on profit.
He's so focused on profit, and I love that we get extra time with him, because like a good comparison might be like Jurassic Park, where we wait too long, where there's not enough protections in place, we're profit driven.
Wow, bringing up my first trauma, because it's that man's death out. The first movie that ever scared me, him dying on the toilet.
That is a good one.
I was terrified of my parents' bathroom because they had a window just above that I could look up, and I was always afraid a T-Rex would pop down. Granted, I was like 5 or 6 when this was happening.
Yeah,
so.
I totally get it. I was afraid of the pool because maybe Jaws would come out of the pipes at some point.
You know what made it worse? One of the times I wasn't paying attention, I didn't push the lid all the way up, and it came down on me.
Oh, that would be terrifying.
Yeah.
That would be terrifying.
One of my earliest memories.
But,
yeah.
like, a good comparison is how they treat that one. Also a good use of that character arc, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're so profit-driven, we're putting people in danger, but we kind of get rid of him quick enough that we can focus on, like, the interesting part of Jurassic Park, which is the dinosaurs.
Yeah, this one is the aliens, and where are these eggs coming from?
True, but we hang on to this bad guy for an extra long amount of time to really hammer home how awful he is. And part of that is because, A, we've had the first movie to build up with.
Yeah.
And B, they kind of knew this was going to be, like, a thing by the second one. Like, we got the green light, let's just go ahead and lay some groundwork for potential more.
Yeah.
And part of that is, of course, building up the alien itself, but also building out this world, and this company is a big part of that.
Yeah, but I have some questions about, like, the egg questions that they bring up. Is like,
sure.
Where do the eggs come from? And in the last movie, there's hundreds of eggs down here. It's like, so why are we worried where these ones are coming from when there's an entire ship that we know the xenomorph could drag these bodies to? Like, it's not... And
it's a question that later movies don't care about, right? Like, we pretty quickly abandoned, like, the whole queen business.
Yeah.
In favor of, like, the just different species versions, or even like, oh, we're having a war against these 2 great aliens and we're in the middle. Sort of nonsense. Not really a war, but just like a battle of the wits, I guess, if you will. But I like that Cameron, because Cameron is the most nerdy man to ever direct, I like that he asked the question of, like, where do they come from? Well, they're kind of bug-esque. There's definitely, like, a invasion quality to them. Spider-esque in a lot of ways. Ant-esque. The movie even says so. What if there's a queen? And yeah, the queen's gross and spooky and kind of adds to that gore that most of this movie has kind of cut out by not having a lot of the chestburster scenes from the first one.
Yeah. Do you think the eggs are, like, ready to go, like, once they're laid, like, the face hugger's already developed, or is there, like, a gestation stage?
So the movie itself implies that they're pretty ready to go right away. Like, there's a pretty short amount of time between, like, the room and her being like, oh, I found the queen, ooh, spooky, and then, like, them just opening and be like, alright, ready to attack, better flamethrower them. But I think Cameron's probable intention, because he is the most nerd and he definitely researched bugs for this movie, was probably, like, a short gestation similar to how ants and bees have, like, everything grouped together.
Yeah, their larval phase.
Yeah, where, you know, how we kind of stuck those guys away in the little cave for a little while, or the honeycomb, let them cook, then they're good.
Well, that was my question, is, like, could you cook the eggs themselves? I don't think so.
So here's the thing. Yes, you could, but it'd be crunchy, like a fertilized chicken egg.
Facehuggers on sticks, like scorpions and tarantulas on sticks.
I mean, they kind of imply that, because we do see our robot friend, like, dissecting one, so we know that they have guts on the inside. We know they are actually, like, alive.
Again, use shellfish for that.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, not just the dumb ideas I was thinking of while we were talking about
I mean,
this.
if we were the ultimate alien species, which, I mean, the movies go out of their way to imply that because we are so resilient and hard to kill, like, eventually humans kind of are the ultimate alien species.
But
we also get our asses handed to us in most of these films.
I was just gonna say, we had a bunch of Marines that, like, they were pretty easy to kill.
No, but, like, especially if you take the series as a whole, like, you know.
We're hard to kill the less number of us there are. We're easy to kill when there's too many of us.
Yeah, there's like a handful specifically that are hard to kill.
What is that threshold of, like, if you hit 6 people, over 6 people, you're too easy to kill. Under 6 people, ooh, very hard.
Yeah, I don't know what the horror movie logic there is, but I mean, if you take Predator and Aliens and combine the whole movies, it's lightly implied, and I would argue on some of these movies, not that lightly, that, like, humans are very, like, survivalists. Like, we will do anything to survive, we'll do anything to protect the children in some of these movies. And so it's implied that we are just as proficient and terrible of an alien species as these other 2 alien species. However, we also get our asses handed most of the time by these alien species. So, like, you know, we're not good at it. We're just harder to kill.
Yeah, well, and I mean, the aliens are hard to kill, too. I mean, that first wave of, like, the Gatling, or the turrets.
Yeah, that was stressful.
Like, ticking down, one is completely depleted, and then, like, just building the tension of, like, okay, this is gonna, the turrets are, like, not gonna keep them out forever. And then also
days is too many.
And we also build up that the reactor is gonna blow, so now that 17 days isn't an option anymore. It's 72 hours.
Yep.
But I do like how they build Bishop here a little bit, too.
I do, too.
He's a little jittery, but he's sensible in his personality.
And again, you like Bishop. Every time Bishop comes on screen, he kind of redeems himself a little bit. It feels like even though he's a robot and he has a programming, it does feel like he's humanistic and trying.
Yeah, no, exactly. He's in there enough to make us question what his intentions are, even though he is deliberately helping everyone. I mean, hell, crawling through a pipe to reconnect the antenna to get the satellite ship in to pick them up.
Yeah, it looks terrible. And again, it's very reminiscent of how Star Trek handles their robot people. In that they're not people. The movie reminds us just enough, but also the way he acts, the way he speaks, the way he seems to be caring about everyone. You do, especially at this point, you kind of forget how robot he is.
Well, and on top of that, like, they're building all these characters, and then there's, again, more sexual tension between Hicks and Ripley.
For fun, really.
But it's a nice build, because it's a fun little thing of, like, okay, well, you're having your kids watch this, or your older kids.
Yeah.
But she's handling his weapon.
Yeah, and yes, it's a little bit silly, because we know that pretty much everyone is going to die. That's, like, the movie, right? You walk into this knowing that most of them are dying.
Yeah.
However, it's a nice little breath, because this is a horror movie, we have to have a breath, and it also gives an excuse for why she now knows how to use the guns.
Yes.
Which is maybe the most important part.
Because, yeah, they didn't have that in the last movie. They were working miners.
Yeah, and now she at least knows 2 guns.
Yeah, which I do think is funny, because Weaver is very anti-gun.
Very.
But she also didn't read any of the stage direction.
No.
So she didn't realize that she'd have to be handling the guns.
No, and the original script that she agreed to wasn't even finished when she was reading it and agreeing to the role. She had already played the character once. This amount that she was given was like the first half of the movie, not even the full movie, when she was like reading through to decide if she wanted to play the role again. And granted, she liked the first script enough to say yes and be interested in the project, but I do wonder that if she had read everything and like been given the full set beforehand, if maybe she wouldn't have had a change to like have Cameron do.
Yeah.
Because like she's notoriously anti-gun. And she felt very connected to this character, to the point where it was kind of her personality for several decades.
Yeah, you're also an actress, so I mean, it's kind of like, get
yeah.
over it a little bit.
A little bit, and I do think that this movie did kind of change some of how she talked in her interviews about it. Granted, she never changed her stance on being anti-gun, as far as I'm aware. Granted, I haven't followed her career
I don't follow any of their political stuff anyways.
I don't either, but I do find it interesting when they get on talk shows and, you know, they don't stop chattering, right?
Or like the voice of Scooby. No, it was not Scooby. It was Shaggy getting fired because he wouldn't play the role unless Shaggy was a vegetarian. It's like, dude, it's a fucking cartoon.
Yeah, but he has a point.
No, he doesn't.
It makes sense for the character. I see the vision.
Scooby or Shaggy as a vegetarian,
but also canonically, Shaggy is not picky eater. He eats everything.
Exactly. Why would he be a vegetarian then?
Because so the movie was trying to imply that him and Scooby had a special connection, and like they were kind of ignoring the original content purposefully because A, there was too much of it, and B, they were trying to recreate and revitalize Scooby, which they did manage to do. So like kind of sort of had like a basis there, and also it was his own personal belief, and he felt like he had a big connection to Shaggy. There's a lot of reasons. I see the vision. I don't fully agree with this decision as far as Shaggy himself goes. I think the man would eat anything put in front of him.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. It's stupid.
But I do think that in Weaver's case, it is such a part of who she is, and especially by the time the second one was in the works, she had kind of been morphed into Ripley. Like, she kept the hair after the movies. Like, she really embodied the character for quite a while.
Was it just her keeping the hair, or was that just the hair of the era?
Both, but okay, Ripley's hair was purposefully over-permed.
Oh.
She was meant to look extra 80s, and so, like, it was never brushed out, the curls were never loosened or styled in any way. She didn't even put it back in, like, a ponytail, which would have been the more practical thing. She was just super perm the whole time, and it was purposeful. It was to make her both a little bit more feminine and also hyper 80s to kind of help drive home that this is the future, but also not that much of a future.
Yeah, it's like with the suits and stuff that they have where it's not the traditional collar, but it still looks like a suit.
And it's why she had her hair back for this movie. Granted, she loosened it a little bit, and I think nowadays she has gotten rid of the curls altogether and has gone for a much more normal, traditional hair style. I think it's straight now. Fine, because it's not her real hair. Like, this is a perm. Everyone knows that. But there was not a ton of wigs actually used in this movie. Multiple characters had their hair cut to fit their character. In fact, one of the women who played one of the Marines was a little miffed that she had to cut her hair for the role because her wedding was coming up after filming was over, and insisted in her contract that Cameron was to gift her a blonde wig so she could wear it on her wedding.
Okay.
Whether or not that's 100% true, a little hard to verify, but it is one of the rumors that goes around with this that, like, everyone, for the most part, looks the way they do, and I think part of that is Weaver gets connected to her characters. I think in the end it ended up working out. She did lean into it. In fact, some of the lines that come with her and the guns were her inspiration, and they were so last minute that they didn't have time to retake it, even though she hated that.
Yeah.
She hated doing things once. She was kind of a perfectionist, and she didn't felt like she did things off the wing real well. But the lines were off the wing, and the delivery was, and honestly, they're some of the best lines in the movie.
You gotta remember, Aliens is still a budget movie.
It technically is, because part of the reason it almost didn't make it is they cut the budget so far that Cameron was like, can't do it for that low, bye. Yeah. And they're like, no, just kidding. It's actually a little bit more.
But we still get a little bit more character building. Like, when she goes to comfort Newt is very nice, sweet little slow down.
It is.
And the way he shows passage of time, because we've been given this time limit of a couple days, and showing Bishop crawling through the pipelines and connecting to the tower, that's our way of showing that, okay, time is passing, the clock is ticking.
And also revitalizing that hope.
And bringing back in the horror, because when they're stuck in that room and the face huggers are there, and again, back to the two mentioned being alive still in the lab, there's also the little details that I had to go back and double check, because she originally had the gun in the room.
She did.
And then
it was on the bed.
Yeah, and then just leaving it outside, just within view, is like
really diabolical.
Burt becomes such an asshole at this point. It's
he becomes a full villain. He's no longer even just an asshole. He is now truly villain, like, Spot. Because I would argue you can kind of make an argument for him as a bit of a brainwashed person, as far as, like, the company is concerned and the assets are concerned.
Yeah, he's a company man.
And also because he hasn't experienced these horrors yet. And that's kind of the whole premise of his character, is like, oh, well, once he's in the trenches, he'll understand how stupid this is, and he will call it all off, and we'll just nuke the planet, and we'll be done. And then he does this bullshit. And you're like, oh, actually, you're the worst person to ever exist.
Oh, yeah. No, exactly. And, like, that's the other thing, too, at the scene, is not just that he's an asshole. It's easy to forget that they mentioned that there were two face huggers previously. So when there's just that one, and then Ripley's fighting it, trying to keep it away from her, and then the second one starts crawling up behind
Newt. So spooky.
It also shows Newt has the ability to think quickly like Ripley.
They do really feel connected, and you do get that almost mother-daughter-ness, because you can start to be like, oh, well, Newt has her smarts, her quick thinking. It's like, no, they're not related, but they are similar.
Yeah, and that's the other bit, too, is that it's hard to hate the xenomorphs either.
Yeah.
Because they're just creatures living out their life cycle. Yeah, it's a parasite, and people generally hate parasites.
True.
But you can't fault them for just being creatures doing what they do.
Especially in this form. I would argue that once we dive into how they are learning and adapting, then they start to feel malicious.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you can kind of personify them and be like, oh, the bitch learned how to use an elevator. My god, fuck that person, right?
Yeah.
But these ones, Cameron purposefully made these ones blind bug-esque.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to really see very well or at all. They seem to be kind of going based off of some other sense, either the sound or heat or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're clever, they're strong, but they're not more clever than a kid and not more strong than an adult woman.
Mm-hmm.
They're close, but it's still fightable. You still feel like you have a bit of a chance when they're this stage. And again, once we get to the adult stage, Cameron smartens them up and makes them a little bit more of a threat, and
yeah.
Then the rest of the franchise spends the rest of the time really trying to make you hate them even more, make them more human-like. Dog-like. Well, but like in the way that you can personify them, make them evil as opposed to just a creature.
Yeah, you put emotion to them instead of.
And
the only time I'd say that they put emotion to them is with the newborn. And that's when it gets really dumb and weird. It
does get dumb and weird, but I would argue that the third and fourth one kind of like build their way there.
Yeah.
In an uncomfortable way, where the first one, they were so alien, they were almost beautiful. They were so unknown that you couldn't really like personify them in any way. They didn't even feel like you could study them, right?
Mm-hmm.
They felt so other.
It's the one.
That's true. There's just the one. This one feels more like an actual animal. Mm-hmm. And there's a good blending of that, like, more mammal instinct, which we tend to personify more, and then the bug-esqueness. And this one, I think, is closer to the bug one, so you don't feel as connected or even be able to put emotion on it as much. You're like, well, look at the dumb little face hugger. Glad you're dead.
Yeah. Well, I get where that's going.
Yeah.
But much like Jurassic Park, the xenomorphs find a way, and it's through
Always.
the ceiling and the air ducts.
They're in the walls!
But to be fair, they're climbing on other stuff. It's not like they're climbing on, like, the ceiling tiles themselves.
No, Cameron does manage to avoid most of the air duct complaints of other action films.
And I love in his comedy, like, because they do eventually go through the air ducts with Newt, because she plays that game the best.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron even says, like, the air ducts aren't meant to be walked through. Like, he's well aware, but he's like, it's these kind of tropes that you can't really get away with. And it's like, but honestly, for this, the setting feels like it kind of works, because depending on how it's set up, the air ducts could just be a box within a bigger system. However,
they never go up in the ceiling. They're always like ground floor level.
Yeah, if it's like a modular system, it's all put together where it's self-supporting. So like,
exactly.
It could be supported on the other sides by other pieces of equipment or something.
The other thing that I like, and this is maybe an architecture nerdy bit, is we do actually get to see they're not really building plans. It's implied they're plans. They're sections. I looked at them way too long.
Yeah.
While they are clearly not detail thought out in the way of like, oh, you could map the whole movie based off of these 2 brief shots of the sections, they are confusing enough that you could make the argument of like, well, obviously architecture is very different than it is on Earth in the past.
Yeah.
Look at how different we look at plans now. And she asked for a structural plan. They gave her a model section. How silly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's harder to read than a plan for most people. And so it looks confusing, it's harder to follow, but once you kind of sort of know what's happening, you feel like you might be able to puzzle your way through. And I think that's a smart way of doing all of this. Because it's similar to how the guns are. It's similar to how the robots or the vehicles are. Where they're kind of familiar. You feel like maybe you even could piece it together. But they're totally different than what you were expecting.
Yeah, exactly. But with all this carnage and chaos, I do like that Ripley isn't good with a gun here.
Yeah, I agree.
And Burke's death honestly feels good.
Yes.
Because he's only thinking of himself instead of the group. And honestly, you don't feel bad for him. You feel good about his death, but you still feel bad for the other 2 Marines who die in this, because they're just trying to get out now too. They're one of the gang now. That we've had enough time to be attached with them enough of like, okay, they're the survivors that we actually want to survive.
But you actually do feel bad for them as opposed to nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. You know, I mean, honestly, now that cuts our cast down to just 3 characters in the xenomorphs. Well, 4, because we got Bishop.
We do have Bishop, who conveniently is forgotten about outside.
Yeah, and honestly, like, there's so much tension that it builds up to, of, like, they're trying to get out, and then Newt falling into the water wheel. It's like, oh, this is not going to go well. Because that's probably the most iconic scene of this movie is, one of them, but one, like, of the xenomorph just popping up behind her. Is like, oh.
It's very iconic.
Well, it's also giving back the despair for Ripley because now she has nothing left.
Exactly.
Like, this is the only thing that she's fighting for is this child, because, I mean, yeah, she's got the cat back home, Jonesy, but...
But at the same time, it's not the same.
Yeah.
And the other thing, though, is we know from both this movie, especially, but also the first one, that Ripley performs best when under the most pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And as an audience member, you hope that the kid makes it, but if her death is what prompts Ripley to wipe the entire species from the planet, you know, Chaos style, you wouldn't be mad at that ending either. So you feel like maybe you didn't quite figure out what the movie was, which is nice because this movie was pretty cut and dry from the beginning. You knew what you were getting walking into.
Partially, until we got the mystery of, like, okay, this isn't the same as the first movie. It's not just one bug. Exactly,
but also this feels like a nicer twist than just like, oh, it's more than one bug.
Well, it's the pacing of the whole movie. It's the ebb and flow of the tension mixed with the action. It's good building the despair of, like, okay, this character that that Ripley and us have become attached to, she's now probably dead. Or being, no, we know that he's probably taking her back for more, to make another one.
Yeah.
But also stuff around them starting to explode, and Bishop is continuing his return. So, like, it's, again, using him as that clock to the countdown of, he's gonna be there. If you're not there, peace.
Exactly.
And it is, she is a badass. I mean,
oh, for sure.
Going into this unknown territory, into the nest, the sound effect of the heart beating against the beeping of the machine is a really good way to help build it. And just altering the altered environment to the xenomorph's needs is like, there's that brief second of like, oh, she found the watch. She is dead now.
Yes. Oh, it's a really great use of suspense and also hopelessness.
And then there is that little, again, the tension and then the boom of, oh, she ran into the eggs and the queen.
And the queen's model is so cool looking.
Oh man, her dome, like, it's, instead of being a dome, it's like a crown kind of thing.
Yeah. And also, I love that we built off of a bit of both bee and also ant and also just extra xenomorph. Like, she's more xenomorphy than the rest.
And, like, also just the little details of she has the clear, see-through, slimy teeth instead of the metallic one of the peasant class or of the working class xenomorphs.
Exactly. And I love that she feels scary and powerful even though because you know basic insect of human, like the real world, you're like, oh, well, she probably can't go very far, because that's how real queens work.
And she's smart.
She's so smart. She figures out elevators quickly, which is more impressive than a lot of people.
But, yeah, smart enough to know that Ripley has leverage of, like, okay, she's got a weapon, she's at the heart of this, and, like, causing the other two xenomorphs to back off. But that's the other thing, too, is, like, it's, again, building this tension, and then Ripley turning on them and burning everything, because she knows that they're gonna, like,
it's never going to stop.
Yeah, no, the moment she turns her back, she's dead, basically. So she's creating this wall with her and Newt to get away.
Exactly.
And also, I do like, the other thing I like with this build-up, too, is it's not just one giant explosion. It's a bunch of smaller ones showing that, like, okay, this place is really falling apart. Like, there's not much, there's this one way out. There's no other chance of trying to escape.
The other thing that, not super, like, long-term usefulness, but the implied bit that the xenomorph, especially the eggs, are super flammable is such a nice little touch, because then you kind of are promised as an audience that, like, oh, it's gonna explode, but it's gonna explode really good, and it's probably gonna catch all these bitches on fire.
And it's a good way for them to fight back.
Exactly, which is good, because again, flamethrower is the coolest movie weapon.
And even when they do get up there in Bishop's betrayal, it's like that good moment of, like, oh shit, Bishop's potentially betrayed them.
Yeah, because again, by this point in the movie, you've kind of forgotten that Bishop might betray them. He's built up so well at this point that you're like, you have such faith in him at this point.
Mm-hmm. And when he does rescue them, it's like, okay, they're safe.
Yeah, you do finally feel relieved.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good twist to have the Queen hiding on the back of the ship, because you truly feel like they're going to fly away and the credits are going to roll.
Well, and that's the other thing, too, is, like, when Cameron says yes and no. So, like, you think it's over, but if you've seen the first one,
you know.
Cameron does that twist with it where it's the stowaway Queen, but he does it in a way where it feels, again, fresh and new, of like, it's not just, it's not this kind of silent creature that's hiding away that you have to get it away at the last minute. This thing is actively hunting them.
Yeah. And by this point, again, especially if you hadn't seen the movie recently or at all, you've kind of forgotten that Bishop's not a person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his supposed death is brutal, and it's very gory. And you do forget for a hot second that he's not that he's, like, a person.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so gory and so shocking that you don't even register, like, oh yeah, that's like transmission fluid coming out of his mouth, not blood.
Yeah.
Like, you don't question it. You just are like, oh, that guy's dead. Darn, I kind of liked him.
Yeah, no, exactly. And, like, it's, when he does save Newt with the airlock and everything, it's a good way of, like, okay, so that's why he's necessary to be there, and Hicks is incapacitated.
Yeah.
But it's the fun, like, little bit of get away from her, you bitch.
It's such a good line. And it was improv.
And my mind went to Super Smash Bros. A new challenger approaches, Ripley in a power loader.
I mean, there is a Ripley, but it's a different one.
Yeah, I know. But it's a fun way of bringing that back, of, like, we saw the power loader before.
And also, like, this feels like the extended power loader scene that, like, we didn't have in the first. We had a good, like, it was a good amount. You felt satisfied. But this felt like the extra fight scene with it that you kind of were craving.
Yeah, you can't just send this alien through the regular airlock. You gotta send it through the bigger airlock, which they do also mention in that scene of, like, he's telling her to, or telling one of the other Marines, seal that airlock up now. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, we know there's an airlock there.
Exactly.
It's these little things in the background that, like, okay, you did a good job of...
It's all consistent.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But now, I mean, once we get her out of the airlock, I mean, again, it's the same plot of Alien 1, just bigger.
Yeah.
Bigger
for sure.
airlock, bigger alien.
But it's so satisfying to have that similarity.
Mm-hmm.
You feel so justified and so proud of her when she does it again.
Mm-hmm.
And also a little sad because she didn't get to go home last time.
Yeah, now it's both finally time to dream, and you know they might be dreaming, but it's not going to change. Both their families are dead, and
yeah, but hopefully, I like that this one leaves with a new hope of, like, oh, maybe they can all be family together and finally rest.
Yeah, a sweet ending that is smashed to pieces in the third.
Yeah, okay, yes, and the reason that everyone loves the second one is, this is a fantastic movie. But then it was followed up by the third one, which, don't get me wrong, is a fun movie. It just does not reach the same level of depth and thought.
It's overhated.
It is overhated. I do think it is overhated. But I see why people were so upset. This movie was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's.
And the third one's just so, like, it's what a normal sequel looks like, right? Like, it's fine.
Yeah,
but it doesn't build the same way.
But that's the other thing too, is Cameron went into this thinking that Aliens wouldn't be as good as it was going to be.
That's true.
And so that's why he created his own thing. And honestly, it was a success.
It was very much a success. It was one of the top grossing films globally that year. And it's considered one of the greatest films ever to come out of the 80s by multiple different accounts.
Yeah, I mean, there's many people I know who, while they appreciate the first one, the second one's their favorite. And I think part of it, too, is because there is more action.
There is.
There's a little bit more... there's character driving on both movies, this one hits a string that's not just, working man, working person, kind of changing up the gender roles a little bit. This one is just very traditional in the fact that, like, okay, it's basically a mother-daughter movie.
And it also, it tells you up front, I'm going to provide you with a strong female heroine lead, and it does not disappoint in any way. You get both the badass kickery from her, but also the sensitive side. She feels like a full and well-fleshed-out character in this movie. The world building is phenomenal. And then the third one is, again, it's just okay, so I see why people were so disappointed. And then there was the fourth one, which is honestly a little bit of a joke.
Yeah, and then 2 prequels, and then a spin-off, which the spin-off's awesome.
I like the spin-off. And don't be wrong, I like all of the Alien movies. I have a good time with all of them. I have a great time with all the Predator films. Like, this was... And, like, part of it is nostalgia goggles, right? For a lot of my horror-loving friends in high school, this was their favorite franchise. They loved these movies. And so we watched them all the damn time. But even without the nostalgia goggles on, most of these films are enjoyable, if not good.
They're 100% good. I mean, that's the thing is, like, not only did this movie do well, it also brought I think as much as Terminator did it, this is one of the ones that really brought James Cameron to the limelight.
Definitely.
And really showed him that he could handle sequels and make them original, unique, and interesting. Because, I mean, hell, look at his own movies. Terminator 1 is fine, and it's not a bad movie by any means.
Terminator 2 is good.
Judgment Day is leagues above it, and it just goes to show that you do one good enough movie to set up the universe, and then you build from there. Set up your core values, core aspects of the movie you want, and then just go build movies within that world, or continue the movie in a logical manner.
Oh, absolutely. And again, this really set him apart as a director as well. His next 2 movies were very good successes, and he kind of just for a while there kept having really good movie after really good movie. Not just directing, but writing too. People, like, he became a big name pretty quickly after this.
Yeah, I mean, he went from Aliens to The Abyss, Terminator 2, True Lies, then Titanic. Like, he hasn't done a lot, but he's done a lot.
At least directorial-wise. Writing-wise, the man has a lot of credits under his belt. And most of them are, if not fun, at least very good. Some of them, great movies.
Yeah.
So, like, it was very impressive that he went through such a quick growth spurt and became such a quick household name.
Yeah. So, Chris, in regards to good, which I think I know your answer to this.
Absolutely.
What do you rate Aliens?
This is just a good movie. I know the aliens are a bit weird, but I would argue that it's an alien movie, and that's the whole point. None of the acting was bad, none of the dialogue was weird or hard, even the children acting was really good. This movie's fantastic.
Yeah, I gotta say good as well. It's one of those movies where I still love the original so much.
Sure.
But this one just does so many interesting things to make it objectively a better movie in many regards.
It does, yeah.
But it's one of the ones who needed the first one to walk so it could run. And I still have that nostalgia for Alien because that was my first introduction to horror.
Sure.
Begrudgingly to my mom. And then this one I watched in the basement alone while my brothers were asleep and everyone else was asleep. So, but it's just such a well put together movie upon rewatching and picking out all the little details and just...
There's so many details.
Yeah, that's the thing too, is like, it's also low budget too, of like, they just had a bunch of scraps, a bunch of like used HVAC equipment and stuff that they just stuck to the walls that, like, unless you're paying attention to, it just works so well together. This movie just works so well.
Absolutely.
So would you recommend Aliens?
Absolutely. Granted, it's a horror film. It's not an overly gory horror film. I think most people could probably get through this one if you're an adult and like horror. However, I get that horror may not be for everyone. However, this one's so good. If for some reason you skip this one or you haven't seen it in a hot minute, this one's totally worth a rewatch.
Well, and I think that's because it doesn't go into the gore. We just have the one chest burster scene and then kind of the goopy one in the lair, but other than that...
and then you get your robot cut in half. But again, he's a robot. It's not really blood gore. It's more like oozy mechanical parts meant to look a little bit like guts. They're not that bad. Granted, my tastes are a bit tainted. I love a gory movie. I love an really gory movie. It's my favorite genre. But I do think that most people could probably get through this one pretty easily. I mean, Game of Thrones was gorier than this by a long shot.
Oh, 100%.
And so I feel like, yeah, if for some reason on God's green earth you manage to not watch this movie, you need to. It's so good.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it to everyone. I mean, it's just a well put together movie. I mean, it's classic for a reason. I'm sure it's been done to death, and we're just adding to that. But
oh, for sure. And also, this one has so many good little fun facts that honestly we didn't even cover today because there was so much to cover. So this is a really good one if you have friends that like to tell you that Aragorn broke his toe in Lord of the Rings. Have them watch this one with you. I guarantee they'll have at least 6 really fun, like, oh, that was real moments for you.
Yeah, like the car crashing and, like, they moved cameras because it was too dangerous. And if the camera had been there, people would have died.
The knife scene was actually a shock to the actor. He didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah. Oh man, I love that dude.
And we didn't not even close touched all of them. If you have a friend who's a movie person, this is the movie to watch with them. It's very good.
100%. So, but yeah, that's Aliens, and we may be done with space for this year, but no, we may be done with, or almost done with space this. Well, no, we are done with space this year.
Yep.
The creatures keep coming to the surface in our next microview and deep dive.
The only place less explored than space? The ocean.
Yeah, we don't even get... No, he's from the river.
That's true. River's pretty well explored.
And
that one guy caught them all, so...
The other one's in the crust.
One might argue that's kind of... Details.
Yeah, they both come to the surface.
Yeah.
But anyway, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the good, the bad, and the weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.